I'm Lizzie and I work at the outdoor school in Tiverton. As a teacher, of course, I have a strong interest in education, but sustainability is my key area of study. I'm going to talk to you about sustainability today, but as that is such a massive thing to talk about, which could be linked to pretty much anything, I'm going to focus on education for sustainability. And as it's July and the world is seemingly drowning in plastic waste, I'll zoom in on that. We are now living in the Anthropocene, a geological age where the biggest effects on our ecosystems are being created by humans. Thanks to David Attenborough's Blue Planet, we have a heightened awareness of the problems associated with plastic waste in our oceans. Many of those who attend our school or forest school sessions will probably have seen this plastic waste washed up on the seashore, so it's not something that we can ignore. What I've found is that there are still some gaps in public awareness. People know to avoid single-use plastic straws in carrier bags because we've seen images of straws sticking out of the nose of a sea turtle and fish trapped in bags in the ocean, but often aren't aware of hidden plastics. Many products contain a sneaky layer of plastic, which may seem like a tiny amount, but when combined with millions of others sat in landfill or floating in our oceans, they become an issue. You've almost certainly eaten or drunk some of it. Studies have found particles of it in most bottled water, some particles wider than a human hair. Lusher et al. Found that 36.5% of fish sampled in the English Channel contained microplastics, as they'd mistaken it for food. But that is not the only way it gets into the food chain. These microplastics can break down further into nanoplastics, and research has shown that these can even be absorbed by algae. Of course, this is a microscopic amount, but straight away that means it's entered the food chain. The algae is eaten by another living creature, which is eaten by another, and as we move up the trophic levels, this amount of plastic is concentrated, creating potentially dangerous levels of toxins. Bon appetit! Some of the hidden plastics I'm thinking of include wet wipes, chewing gum, cigarette butts, they're the most common on our shores, and even clothing. Fast fashion has a big part to play, as man-made fabrics shed tiny plastic fibres into our water each time they're washed. Menstrual products are another group of items that contain hidden plastics. In my last big piece of research, the vast majority of people didn't know that tampons have a thin layer of plastic around the outside. They hold the fibres together. Many of these people were unknowingly flushing them down the toilet, thinking they'd break down just like toilet paper. They won't, and they shouldn't be flushed. There are alternatives if you want to avoid these particular hidden plastics. Just search for plastic-free periods and you'll find lots of info online. This lack of awareness around hidden plastic is not something we should be embarrassed about, as big companies who advertise and sell these products don't make it obvious, but it highlights a gap in education and shows what a difference we could potentially make with a little extra knowledge. Recycled plastic has less of an environmental impact, but it does still use a lot of energy in its production, and plastic can only be recycled a certain number of times before it's no longer usable. So although recycling is a good idea, it's not the perfect solution. Plastics recycling in particular can also be really confusing because there are so many types. Some are hidden or attached to other materials, some can be recycled at curbside, and some can't. One thing you can do is to look for the resin code on the packaging, and you should find a number ranging from 1 to 7. If it's a number 1, like most plastic drinks bottles, it should be easily recyclable. But if it's a number 3, like cling film or bubble wrap, then steer clear. A number 7 just means other, so that could mean it will be more difficult to recycle, but does also include bioplastics, so it's pretty complex. There are cheat sheets available online which you can stick on or next to your recycling bin to help remember which can be recycled. I mentioned bioplastics, and many companies are jumping on this bandwagon. Although they are not created from oil and could technically decompose, they're not without issues. Many bioplastics actually take more energy and water to produce than regular plastic. Although they may be labelled as biodegradable, many will only biodegrade in a specially built industrial composter, not in your regular compost, and almost certainly not in landfill, because of the lack of light and oxygen. Just read labels carefully. If they can't be recycled with your regular recycling, won't decompose in your compost, and you don't have access to an industrial composter, what are you going to do with it? If you've listened so far, then that could be considered education. Some of what I have said you probably already knew, but there may have been some things that were new to you, or you might be considering finding out a little more about something. Strictly speaking, that's education, and it may have had a positive impact in a small way. But for many young people, just telling them this kind of information about the problems with plastic waste could be overwhelming. Many of our learners at the outdoor school are already carrying more than their fair share of anxiety right now, for whatever reason. Add to that the fact that most of them, like most children, don't actually have control over most of the decisions in their lives regarding purchasing and lifestyle, and you may as well have told them that it's their fault the turtles are dying and the fish are stuck in carrier bags. They'd feel frustrated and helpless. So how do we use education for sustainability in a positive way? A feeling of helplessness does not lead to proactive change. We want learners to feel empowered. So yes, we might teach them a little about the amount of plastic pollution in the ocean and how it gets there, but we would combine this with a beach clean or a litter pick of our local area to show how they can make a difference. We will teach them sustainable life skills such as how to recycle their waste, cook food from scratch, and encourage them to bring a reusable drink bottle to school. But much more of our education for sustainability will be indirect. This is where forest school, education outdoors, and project-based learning comes into its own. Sustainability, as I mentioned, is a huge topic and often annoyingly complex. The answers are usually not simple, and plastic pollution is one example of this. Systems thinking is really important when it comes to making a change in the world of sustainability, as you need to consider how a change to one system might affect another. It's all connected. We cannot simply ban all plastic, as without making other changes to compensate, some people would be left without access to drinking water or sterile medical equipment, and a lot of food would be ruined in transit. In order to prepare young people for a future which they can live more sustainably, we need to move away from the more traditional style of teaching, which focuses on memorising facts and learning subjects discreetly, and towards a style of education which encourages critical thinking and creativity. Life isn't split up into subjects, but made up of interactions between all our existing knowledge and skills. We want learners to be able to draw on these connections, to be able to problem solve and make positive changes both for themselves and for the wider community. At the outdoor school, we use project-based learning, which creates connections between all the things we're learning. This not only makes what we are doing more meaningful and memorable, but encourages important life skills. A learner might decide that our base needs a recycling bin, for example. They would use all the core subjects within their project, designing their bin, measuring the space, writing to ask for the resources, working out costs, building the product, and evaluating how it went. As well as this, it's likely they'll be learning resilience when things don't quite go to plan, teamwork and time management, but best of all, it's all purposeful. This kind of education helps to prepare learners for the world they'll enter after their school years, and helps to give them the skills they need to become systems thinkers and change makers themselves. It's a widely held belief, and one that's supported by research, that a strong connection with the outdoors encourages children and adults alike to care for it and choose more pro-environmental behaviours. But that's not the only way the forest school ethos can help. Many unsustainable behaviours stem from a desire for or expectation of convenience. With the forest school ethos, there is much less of a focus on convenience and results, and more of a focus on the method or journey. Instead of buying a pack of factory-made skewers to toast our marshmallows on, for example, we find a stick of suitable length and thickness and whittle it. Rather than plugging in an electric kettle, we collect dry wood and use it to light a campfire and wait while the water boils. Thinking back to the recycling bin, we could have bought one much more quickly, but creating our own is more valuable. This slower pace allows us to appreciate the energy that goes into these small tasks, rather than taking the convenience for granted. Students learn patience and an appreciation for the natural materials around us. This kind of learning helps to encourage creativity and balance out the fast-paced, convenience-based life going on elsewhere. Fostering a love for the outdoors and an understanding of its importance is truly valuable both for individuals and society as a whole, so we need to get outside as much as we can. Education for sustainability comes in many forms, and at the Outdoors School and within the Outdoors Group we are doing our best to encourage them all, both through knowledge and skills and through that all-important connection with nature.